Season-ending points gained edition. Keyonte George trends well, but not as a star compared to other guards. We'll show you next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow. Wait, that's my ending. Here's my intro. It's brand new.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
New stuff. How cool is that? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Jazz. Points gained is our exclusive offensive metric. It evaluates how players do. We will look at what the Jazz players done. We will look at the league. We will look at Keyonte compared to point guards back to 2021. So we'll look at like 15 for like that whole 6-year span. We can look at 22, 23 if you want to, and 23 I just thought was early. We will look at our veterans and how they're trending. Lauri, Collin, Jordan, etc. on today's show. So that is the plan. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. It's a daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and making it way better, hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. We are here for you even in the off season. So play-in starts tonight. That'll be fun. We'll be kind of we'll follow the playoffs together. So we'll kind of do that each night. We'll start following rebuilds, and we'll do draft prospects predominantly for the next few months. So a lot of stuff. And as I told you in today's show, we will look at. So we've got a big one coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. A little competitive. And I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. So join friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Grab Monopoly Go. All right, let's get points gained. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, we will share screens. And for those of you watching or listening, I will try to do the best I can to make sure that you don't feel left behind, because you are probably our everydayers. I did not thank you for making Locked on Jazz our first listen of the day. And I did not thank you for being an everydayer, which if you are with us in this offseason, you certainly are. So let's start with the Utah Jazz. And then we will look at the league as a whole, just so you know who had the best years. And then we will look at our veteran, our Keyonte, and give us an idea of what that looks like to Keyonte. And then we will look at our veterans as well. So that's the plan. All right. Those of you on YouTube, you should actually have it. So Lauri Markkanen was our best points game player at 1.9 points per. And what that means is that in Lauri Markkanen's 18.4 scoring attempts a game, scoring opportunities a game, he averaged 1.9 points more than the average players would with those 18.4. Taylor Hendricks actually turned out to be completely average. So in other words, if we were to take all 18.4 of Lauri Markkanen's possessions and give them to Taylor Hendricks, now obviously he only used 6 for a reason, but it would then mean that the Jazz score 1.9 points more with Lauri per game. That's a lot. 1.9 is one of the best in the league. There's usually 3 players over 3 and 10 players over 2. So for Lauri to be at 1.9, he's in about the top 11 or 12 players in the NBA in points game. Walker Kessler 1.0. Very good. Centers do well in this. John Collins 1.0. Colin Sexton 0.8 is terrific for a guard. Above average and terrific. Johnny Juzang, 0.5. That is a huge step in his career. That's really cool. Taylor Hendricks was even. Chris Dunn was a minus 0.3, which is pretty good for him. Lucas Dominitz, minus 0.9. Kyra Lewis, -1. Bryce Keyonte, minus 1.1. Taylor Horton Tucker, minus 1.5. And Jordan Clarkson, minus 1.9. What this means is that in the 16 possessions that Jordan Clarkson uses, or scoring opportunities that Jordan Clarkson uses every night, he negates all of the positive of Lauri Markkanen. That's literally the way to read this. So that between Lauri Markkanen's plus 1.9 and Jordan's minus 1.9, we then become even again. Minus 1.9 is pretty extreme. It's third worst in the NBA, I think, this year. and by far the worst for Jordan over the last 5 years at least. So that's what's the takeaway here. Lauri's still terrific. Walker and John are doing a nice job at center. John had a good year. He's had better. We'll show that to you in a second. Collin is a bona fide scoring guard. And then Keyonte's minus 1.1 we'll dig into in a moment to give you an understanding of kind of what that means. Here's the league. Maybe this will give you some. Joel Embiid was a plus 3.5. He was the best there was in the NBA this year in his limited time. Giannis was 3.2. Nikola Jokic was 2.8. So we had 2 players over 3 this year. Interesting, we had this offensive explosion, and then we actually had a pretty low number of players. Last year, Nikola was a 4.3. Durant was a 4.1. Embiid 3.7. Steph 3.2. Lillard 3.1. We had actually more players over top 10 last year. But if you look over the years, this gets pretty consistent. Nikola was 3.9, Rudy 3.5, Durant 3.2, Giannis 3.2, Allen 3.1. Big guys really dominated. Then teams stopped allowing the dunk. 21-22 was like the year that everybody dunked after Rudy had dunked all the time in 21-22, and the centers became the most valuable player. Here is again Steph 4.0. So also we can look at this for Steph for a second. He's really slipped. So anyway, we go back to 23-24. Joel and Giannis are both 3.5 and 3.2. This tells me a little bit the league also decided that like the best players wouldn't be allowed to dominate. And then we talked about this early in the year. Everyone's going 4-on-5, 5-on-4 after being double teamed, or 4-on-3, and they score all the time. That's why there was an offensive explosion. Shea was 2.6. Daniel Gafford 2.3, which was a huge pickup for Dallas and why Dallas has gone nuts. Jared Allen 2.1, why they survived with all those injuries. Kristaps Porzingis, why Boston has the number 1 record when they added Kristaps Porzingis. That was the best offseason move. Luka's a 2.1. LeBron 2.0, which is just mind-boggling at his age. Durant 2.0. Rudy 2.0. Grayson Allen just signed a massive extension. There's Lauri at 1.9. Mark Williams. Derek Lively. Dallas is going to just be really hard to beat. When you have Daniel Gafford at 2.3 and Derek Lively at 1.8, and that's 4.1, and then Luka's at 2.1, and you're at 6.2, it's really hard to catch that. Once you're positive 6.2, it's incredibly hard. And PJ Washington's a negative. One of the thesis we have on this is that you just want to have as few negative players as possible. If you can keep everybody above pot, Tim Hardaway is a minus 1.0. Their outside shooting, their other guys just might not be enough because that minus 2.0 is going to get them a little bit. As they match up against the Clippers, I'm now on a tangent I wasn't planning on. We'll do this maybe later in the week. If you look at them, other than Russ, minus 1.4, the Clippers do not play a negative player, which means going to make them incredibly difficult to beat in the playoffs. These are the 2 second and third best teams in the West behind Denver, in my opinion, for the playoffs. So, but Dallas is going to be tough to beat. Kawhi comes in at 1.8, Sabonis 1.7, Anthony Davis 1.6, Zubac 1.6, Cat 1.6, and Steph down to 1.5. That's a huge drop for Steph. Huge, huge, huge drop. I was going to do free agents today. We'll do it probably tomorrow. I just had too much other good stuff. All right, let's look at the bottom of the league. Scoot Henderson was a minus 2.7. We'll look at him compared to rookie guards here in a second when we look at Keyonte in a moment. The next guy who played in the league is Jordan, minus 1.9. So Jordan had the second worst offensive year, impactfully wise, of any player in the NBA this year. Rookie Kobe Buffkin, minus 1.9. Jordan Poole got above. Jordan Poole was the second worst for most. He must have gotten hot near the end of the year. Got up to minus 1.7. So a lot of these guys obviously don't play much. Cody Martin in Charlotte plays a little bit at minus 2.0. We'd have to check on his. He was oft injured this year. His total games played this year was 28. I don't think that counts. So yeah, of the bottom guys who actually played games this year, Scoot 62, Jordan 55, Jordan Goodwin 57, Jordan Poole 78, Shaedon Sharpe 32, Talon 51, Killian Hayes, Jeremy Shohan, Karis LeVert, who killed us despite that. And Paulo, still not very efficient in Paulo Banchero, which is an interesting one to keep an eye on. He really might become. And then Cade Cunningham, Russell Westbrook, Jalen Green. A lot of inefficient scoring. Kyle Kuzma minus 1.3. It'll be interesting to see. Those players all scare me. Jaden Ivey, who I'm a big fan of, but minus 1.3. Scanning up here. More Reggie Jackson. There's Keyonte at minus 1.1. Keyonte in kind of a group with Cam Thomas, Josh Hart, PJ Washington, DeJounte Murray. Not bad, actually. Tim Hardaway, not bad as a rookie. All right, we'll talk more about it. We'll look at Keyonte compared to other rookies of years past as we continue on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Hyundai lineup of cars, pretty unequaled from the Kona all the way up to the Palisade. And then, of course, the Elantra and the Sonata are the sedans, and the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6 have won every award you could possibly imagine. Couple that, the Hyundai's great cars, with Murdoch and their commitment to making sure that you have a fabulous, no regrets experience, and we've got something for you that's good. So why don't you email me if you're looking for a car, and we'll get you a VIP experience over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also Logan and Linden. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Do tell me, if you don't mind, what location you're planning to attend so that I can set it up as quickly as possible. That's dlock09@gmail.com. If you're in the market for a car, include Hyundai. You can decide after that, but find out what you can get the best deal that's available for you and see what your opportunities are with Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street. Today's show is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. This is so fun. Monopoly Go. We've all been there. Either as a player or fan, it's halftime. The scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low. You're not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. Lift up your head. Say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game. Pull out some bake heists. Take as much of your friend's money as possible. Okay, that's probably not what you said, but that's what you say when you're playing Monopoly Go. That's right. The smash hit game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends and get most of the riches and the biggest empire. It's Monopoly you love, but on the phone anytime with a ton of new exciting twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Change other players' rent for their iconic property. Charge players rent for their iconic properties. And you can even work with your friends to crack open community chess in tournaments, get extra rewards, and climb the leaderboard. So get out there, put your game face on, fire up, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or on Google Play. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. The NFL mock draft is here. It's NFL's mock draft live, April 17th. That's tomorrow, 7 a.m. Eastern, streaming on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, or free on Amazon Fire TV apps. Find the ultimate 6-episode series, April 17th at 7 o'clock Eastern, to hear the local experts and picking up every NFL franchise with live reactions, local college experts, even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL mock draft, April 17th, 7 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Mountain, streaming live on Locked On Sports 24/7 or on Amazon Fire TV. Mark your calendar, put it down, 5 o'clock tomorrow night, NFL mock draft. Awesome presentation. Grab it on Amazon Fire TV or on YouTube on Locked On Sports Today. Should be great. All right, let's look at Keyonte. I might just screen share again. I'm a screen sharing wizard today. It's like I just learned a new trick. No, I didn't. I actually know how to do this all the time. I don't still know how to get the audio to work every time I screen share. All right. I think you'll have this. So if we go back to the 14-15 season and look at kind of first round draft picks who made it, Keyonte was a minus 1.1 in points gained. And what you're going to see, and I went through 2021, and you're going to see that there's a few people that are really special. There's 3 rookies in the span I looked, which is 14-15 through 2021. There are 3 rookies who had years that were considerably 4 maybe better efficiency-wise than what we saw out of Keyonte George this year. It's a minus 1.1. Most rookies aren't very good. Donovan was a minus 0.6. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was a minus 0.1. We should have known. Ja Morant was a minus 0.3. And Tyrese Halliburton is the only point guard that I found in this stretch from 14-15 to 2021 that was positive. Should have known. That seems to be like the superstar level. Trae Young was a minus 0.8. Pretty good, but not as good, right? Pretty good. Trae Young is an offensive wizard. He's a walking top 10 offense the minute he's on your team. So Donovan, Shai, Ja Morant, Tyrese Halliburton were considerably better than Keyonte in their rookie year, which you probably knew having watched Donovan. But minus 1.1 to minus 0.6 for Donovan, minus 0.1 for Shai, minus 0.3 for Ja, and plus 0.3 for Tyrese Halliburton. The rest of the guys all similarly struggled. Spencer Dinwiddie was a minus 1.5. He's turned out to be a perfectly good pro. D'Angelo Russell, minus 0.9. Chris Dunn, minus 1.0. Denzel Valentine, who flamed out. Lonzo Ball was a minus 2.6. De'Aaron Fox, a minus 1.9. Dennis Smith, a minus 2.7, and then turned out to flame out. That's a little concerning. Collin was a minus 1.3. Kobe White was a minus 1.5. It took him kind of until this year to click in. I put Anthony Edwards in there just to show you that he's not a point guard, but that rookies can really struggle and then turn out to still be a stud because he'll win an MVP one day. LaMelo Ball, minus 1.0. Killian Hayes, minus 2.4. Lonzo Ball's interesting because we never really found out. The takeaway I have here kind of is there were a few guys in this stretch, and maybe as I'm reporting this to you now, I'm kind of wondering whether I should have gone a little longer. But there's a few guys here that gave up numbers in their first year that if I was their team, I would have panicked. Lonzo Ball's minus 2.6, I would have panicked. Dennis Smith's minus 2.7, Killian Hayes minus 2.4, and I would have panicked right. Those guys didn't pan out. That's just too negative. Scoot Henderson is in this range. If you're Portland, you should be really scared. Scoot Henderson is in this range this year. The rest of the guys, then you have the 4 guys we talked about that were pretty studly. And then you've got Trae that's kind of near it. And then the rest of them are kind of in the middle of the pack and go on to have a nice NBA career, non-star. It's not the biggest sample size. I'm not sure I would walk into Danny Ryan and Will Hardy and profess this to be a fact. It's an interesting thing. It probably deserves me to look at, the guards of I had decided when I started that the 21-22 class, we just might not know yet on Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs. We just don't know yet. And so on where they go, some of them were really bad, though. I will tell you that. I do recall this to be the fact that, the 21-22 class that has the, or 20, is it the 21? Yeah, 21-22, because the last year we looked at was 2021. The 21-22 class, so that's Cade Cunningham and some of those guys, Jalen Green, I mean, they were brutal. They were at the very, very bottom of the pack and probably fit under this level of very concerning. I'm pulling it up right now just to have it for you. And of course, it doesn't. Cade Cunningham was a minus 2.1, so he would fall into the category. Jalen Green has actually got worse in his second year, which was the kind of disconcerting thing in Houston. And remember, they were literally interested in trying to move him this trade deadline. Jalen Green was a minus 0.6 his rookie year. So that's actually, and then he regressed the other way. So of those 2 early picks in that draft, and Jalen Green's not really a point guard. Jalen Suggs is another one who has, not shot it well or played well, was a point guard. Now I'm not even sure what he is, other than just an unbelievably great defensive player. Suggs was a minus 0.29. So both Suggs and Cunningham in that 21-22 season were there. Now also the other one that gets a little funky about the 21-22 season, if you recall, is we're kind of still floating out of COVID in the 2021. COVID happens in March 11th of 2020. So the 2021 season has like no training camp, nothing. Like, it was a brutal year for rookies. So we do get into some data that's a little funky there. But so the takeaway I have from Keyonte is he's probably not a star. At least this, just using this as a metric. There's others, but he's probably not a star. But despite the fact that his shooting percentages were so low, I'm not in a panic. His pure shooting percentage numbers, but the fact he went to the free throw line that much, how efficient he was in some other areas, mean that I think he's proving he's a middle of the pack guard in the NBA who's got a chance to be positively impactful. But I don't see a panic level of like, oh dear, minus 2.7, minus 2.4, Killian Hayes, Dennis Smith, Scoot Henderson level. I don't, but I also don't see Donovan Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous, Jay Morant, Tyrese Halliburton. Oh, we have a star. I think that's what you're looking at when you look at those numbers right there for Keyonte George. All right, we will continue. What trends do we see out of our veterans? Collin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins. Which way are they heading? We'll look at that through Points Gained next on Locked On Jazz. Next episode of Locked On Jazz today is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Convenient, flexible online therapy. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. If you're considering therapy or you're not sure why would I do therapy, here's what my take on this is. And I am just a guy who hosts a podcast and does NBA play-by-play, but it's a good way to think about it. I think you're looking for performance enhancement in your brain and your mind. Right? The same way you go to the weight room to lift or you run to get your heart better or whatever, you're looking for performance enhancing in your brain and your mind. Are the same things catching up to you in life? Are you getting yourself in a pattern? What are those things? Can you stop doing those things to damage yourself? Can you stop your brain from causing yourself problems? Are you a victim of presumptuous fear and it drives you into cycles, whatever it might be? So BetterHelp is here for you. It's convenient, flexible online therapy. Visit BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. You choose your therapist. If it doesn't work out for you, you can choose another one. It's flexible. It's suited to you. So start thinking about therapy. Start thinking about BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. It's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen. Again, tomorrow, 5 o'clock, live NFL draft mock draft. If you have an NFL fan, they should watch it. It's great. It's an unbelievable show. All 32 local experts. 4 NFL draft experts, 8 NFL draft national experts, 20 college voices, all popping in, dropping in names, comments, all the rest. Totally great for you. Veterans. Another screen share in a minute. I just was so prepared today. So let's, if you're on YouTube, you got these screen shares. On audio, please tell me that it didn't bother you. So let's look at our veterans. Today, Lauri was a 1.9, Jordan was a minus 1.9, Collin was a 0.8, and John Collins was a 1.0. So if we look at Lauri, it's just an incredibly awesome progression, and the Jazz and Will Hardy deserves great credit. 5 years ago, I looked at these guys for the last 5 years. Lauri was a minus 0.1. He then went to a 1.1 his last year in Chicago, which was a sign that something was positive, and Chicago, of course, at that point got rid of him. He then went to 0.4 in Cleveland and then jumped to 2.4 for the Jazz last year and 1.9 this year. So he was a little less efficient this year as he was a year ago. But that jump is still there. That jump is real. I think we learned this year that everything about Lauri we saw last year was real. Let's go to Collin. Minus 0.2. So we had to remember he was a minus 0.8, I think, his rookie year. We just showed you earlier. Or he's a minus 1.3 in 18-19 his rookie year. He jumps to minus 0.2 his second year. Pretty great. And then 0.1 his third. Then he plays 11 games next year. He comes to Utah. And again, credit to the Jazz and Will Hardy. He becomes a 0.8 and a 0.8 both the last 2 years. Collins really, this is legit. Collins a legitimately efficient scoring guard in the NBA. He's got some defensive weaknesses, his size issue, off-ball defender, not great. Okay, great offensive player. And the league is largely about offense. John Collins is super interesting. I have rarely seen variety from a player at this level. So John Collins in 1920 was a 3.1, one of the best in the NBA. Then he was a 2.0. Then he went to 1.2. So really fading in the wrong direction. And then a 0.2. Like I have almost never seen a fade like that from a player. And then this year for the Jazz, he's back to a 1.0 in efficiency. I think John proved he's an efficient offensive player, viable offensive player. I think everything we heard about John before he came, that he was a great dude and that everyone's going to love him and that he's a total tweener player, that he's not really a defensive five, but he's an offensive five. Like that whole thing we talked about. If you were an everyday or you've heard a lot, if you're not, you're like, what the hell is he talking about? John really is a defensive four and an offensive five is the issue with his career. And it's kind of always been a case. And he's, and that's kind of where we are with him. The 1.0, look at these numbers. I think he could probably go up. Like he shot it well this year. We probably get him on the cup more. He probably could be more efficient. And then there's Jordan Clarkson, who unfortunately, and with age, is just trending in the wrong direction. So his 1920 year, which was his best, he was positive 0.2. Then he went to negative 0.7. Then he went to negative 1.0 and was there again last year. And then this year at 23-24, Jordan went to a minus 1.9. This one, was it just playing with not a real point guard without Mike Conley? Was it? Who knows? The concerning thing on Jordan is he's 32 years old and he really now has to, 31 years old and going to be 32, really has to start taking care of his body because this starts to fade on you fast and it happens in a hurry. And when it's done, and if you're on the wrong side of it, it's hard to recover. The numbers on Jordan, frankly, are disturbing at the rim. He was a 70% rim finisher in his first year in Utah, 67%, 69% a year ago. This year, he was only at 60% at the rim. He's had an unbelievable floater game and kind of mid-range game for the last few years. He was at 49% 1 year between the two. He was about 53% between the two and about 49%. And then this year, he dropped to 44%. And then obviously his three-point shooting legs were just gone. He shot 29% from three. If it was just the three-point shooting on Jordan that caused him to have this drop to negative 1.9, I would really dismiss it and say, you know what, he had a bad shooting year. It was unusual. It was funky stuff, bad spacing, couldn't figure out his role, all good. But the fact that he is slipped at the rim to his career low at the rim, actually a career low since his very first or second year in the NBA, and that his floater game, his mid-range game that was kind of holding him, propping him back up a little bit, had dropped. Those two are concerning. And then the third one is that he actually is not self-creating anymore. He went from 15% of his twos or 16% of his twos being assisted and 22% of his twos being assisted in the last few years to 37% of his twos being assisted this year, which should it mean if you're getting more of your field goals assisted, it should mean all of your stuff's increasing because it means you're in isolation is usually a harder thing to do. His shot distribution, he actually started taking far fewer threes. He's back down to nearly a career low in percentage of shots he took to three, which is probably fine when you're shooting 29%. But it also so things were super out of whack. He's not at the age where you just say it's over. You just put up a cautionary flag right now on a year of that nature because that's for Jordan, because I think that's what's disconcerting is that there is an age game here going on and that there were multiple trends of him slipping this year. Rim, 2-point shooting. So just a lot of different aspects that make you maybe a little bit more nervous than otherwise. On John, I think there's probably another offensive jump. For Lauri and Collin, that's super great news that both those are completely legitimate and viable. That is Locked On Jazz today. We'll look at free agents on points gained. We're going to look at some other metrics tomorrow on Snar. Tyler Snar, threes and dunks, which I subscribed to this year and then never used. So we'll look at that. We'll look at B-ball index and some of their kind of stuff as well. So a lot of stats heavy stuff this week. Playing games we'll analyze today as well. And then we'll start our project looking at rebuilds by franchise and how they do things. And we'll try to label them all like pure draft, pure free agency, pure, which we can never do, draft and pivot. Like we'll try to look and get them all labeled in some way. And then we hopefully can come up with what we think is the right way. And then we'll sit on our high horse and say that our data says this, and this is what you're supposed to do. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On Jazz. Mark down your calendar for tomorrow, 5:00 Mountain Time for the Locked On NFL Draft on Locked On Sports 24/7 channel, both on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV.